What if I said to you there was an AEG on the market today, designated actually as a full auto shotgun, but that I think personally might serve you guys better being thought of as a squad support weapon? Well, today I have that weapon with me. Some of you would have seen it on the channel before. It's a staple of my collection, and it is, of course, the Tokyo Marui SGR12. So the SGR12 obviously isn't actually a real world platform. It can actually be found in the video game franchise Resident Evil, where it's referred to primarily as Thor's hammer. However, in terms of airsoft, the SGR12 shares a hell of a lot in common with Tokyo Marui's other full auto shotgun, which is of course the AA12. Now, the AA12 is a real world platform. It's actually been used in real tactical situations, mostly by law enforcement, and perhaps not as much these days, but it certainly has been around the block. So what makes the AA12 and the SGR12 differing options? What can we take into consideration when finding out which one might be right for you? Well, obviously the AA12 is the real world platform. That's the one that if you want to be as true to form as possible, then the AA12 will be it. However, if you're not worried about that and we're just looking for performance figures and we're looking for what makes the most sense out on the airsoft field, then I would have to go with the SGR12. And that's purely because the SGR12 benefits from a slightly more modernized exterior and a slightly more tactical feel to it than the AA12 ever has had. Internally, they are, like I say, pretty much identical. They utilize the same motor, gearbox, and triple hop system, which we'll look at in a little while as well. So performance-wise, there's probably not a lot to gauge between the two rifles. However, if you're looking to run lots of cool tactical accessories, then really the SGR12 is the one to go for. So let's make our way through the weapon and we can actually see what we've got here. So starting up at the front, we have this hugely aggressive front end, partially down to the handguard, although it's not a true handguard like you'd find on other AEGs. We can't remove this one, it is all pre-built into the rest of the body. But suffice to say, it's a good looking beast anyway, and hugely aggressive. We have these slanted cutouts at the front of it, almost akin to the sort of muzzle look that you get to like a G&G Predator series and that kind of thing, but made more so with this great big muzzle at the end of it as well. Now, this is of course this big because we are housing a tri-shot system, 3 barrels of fun, 3 hop-ups. Like I say, we'll go into that in a second, but unless we go down the route of 3D printing something, you're not going to get anything else on the end of this. You're certainly not going to get anything in the way of a tracer or a suppressor or anything like that for it. But why would you want to? It's a good looking piece of kit anyway. We don't want to ruin those looks. So let's talk about the handguard itself. We get a plethora of options, as I always say. So we have, first off, we can mention the M-lock systems. So we have M-lock at the top, at the bottom, and on both sides, so the 3, 6 and 9 positions. This is somewhat additional to all the extra pick systems we get with this rifle as well. So you can see at the top here we get a small amount of Picatinny built onto the system. We get these additional rails in the box with the rifle as well, and obviously there's a little bit of Picatinny at the bottom there as well as this monolithic section at the back here, which we'll touch upon as we go back. But suffice to say, you have all the options in the world to mount things, whatever you want, torches, pet boxes, anything like that. Or as I've done, foregrips. I personally quite like having a foregrip at the front of this. We can touch upon that when we get to the mags at the back, because it's sort of interlinked. Yeah, suffice to say, unlike the AA12, you have loads of options for mounting things on this thing. If we come back along the body slightly, we do have this charging handle, and this folds out. It's very nicely constructed. Once it's in, it's not going to flop about and fold out. Unfortunately, it doesn't reciprocate. That would have been fucking awesome. But it doesn't reciprocate, but nor is it sprung loaded, but it does actually give us access to our 3 hop-up dials. Now, as we talked about before, this is a tri-shot system. We have 3 barrels in play, and as such, Tokyo Marui have given us 3 adjustable hop-ups. The reason for this being, we can obviously dial in the flight of the BBs as we see fit. We can keep a very narrow spread, keep everything nice and tight together. That's going to hurt like a bitch when it hits someone, especially if you take this thing into CQB, where it is still technically CQB legal. But I think the real aim of it is to replicate the spread of a proper shotgun, albeit only with 3 BBs as opposed to peppering someone with, you know, proper rock salt or something like that. So we can dial these in, dial the flight path of the BB to spread exactly as we want it, and therefore replicate a shotgun a little bit nicer, a little bit more authentically. Now, as I say, not sprung loaded, so we do have to actually push the charging handle back to recover the dials. If we come back along, this gun is, in terms of fire controls, very similar to an AR-15 or something like that. We have a very typical fire control unit here. We have safe, semi and full auto. Semi being obviously the reason it is legal in CQB as well. The fire controls are right-handed. This is predominantly a right-handed gun. We have nothing on the other side. Charging handles on the left-hand side. It all sorts of fits together for a right-handed user. Incidentally though, the mag release is ambidextrous, but that's about all we've got going for it in terms of, you know, dexterity of use. Trigger's very responsive, very nice, as you'd expect from Tokyo Marui. Not a problem with that at all. And moving back along the body even more, we have a huge number of sling options. Again, at the front, we get only 1 sling option. Up at the front here, again, sort of tending to lean towards the right-handed user. However, at the back, we have a more sort of ambi setup where we have sling points on both sides, and they are made of metal. They are extremely well put together, and you don't have to worry about anything snapping and dropping this rather expensive rifle on the floor. It is all extremely well put together. I have to say, the materials used in the SGR12 are second to none, as you'd expect with Tokyo Marui, really. The build quality is absolutely fantastic. And even to the extent that we have this entirely polymer stock at the rear, which houses a lot of the gubbins of the gun, if you like. But they've taken the time to change the plastics being used and the polymer, if you like. So we have the main polymer section, but then we have this really nice rubberized section on the top for cheek weld. Again, I always liken it to the feel of an old Sky remote, and that's very true of this as well. It's particularly comfortable and really, really nice. And then we get a rubberized butt pad at the rear. Now, the rubberized butt pad at the rear, incidentally, is where we hold the battery. And I've got to say, there's not a massive amount of space in this thing for batteries. Excuse me. Yeah, there's not a massive amount of space for batteries in here. You'll see it clicks off, and all we can fit in is a very small Tamiya 7.4. Yeah, not the biggest space in the world, but then it is quite efficient for something that's operating 3 barrels, 3 hop-ups and that kind of thing through a single gearbox setup. There's slightly more resistance, obviously, as you'd expect from you know, an AEG running a single barrel system, but I've not found a problem with it. A battery of that size will last a 3-hour game morning quite easily. So you 2 of them to make it through a day, maybe. Not a problem at all. Let's talk about this monolithic rail at the top, because you can run optics with this, and it's not actually a bad idea to run something like an EOTech with this if you can. Certainly if you've dialed the hop-ups in for narrow spread, it's actually quite an accurate AEG out of the box. Not too dissimilar to, you know, running a Tokyo Marui 416 in that respect, or anything like that, or a SCAR. I only name drop those because they're in my collection and I have examples of using those, but you get my drift. It's actually a really nice setup in that respect. So if you can run an optic, or if you have to suffice just on the plastic iron sights, they're not bad either. They are dialed in for windage and elevation capabilities as well. So you can get quite a nice setup just running the iron sights. But I particularly like running an EOTech. I think it looks quite meaty and chunky on these things anyway. And if you can run something like that, it just adds to the overall look, especially if you're running like a pec box and a, you know, that kind of thing up the front as well. The chunkier and more aggressive you can make this thing look, the better, in my opinion. So, touching upon performance, like we said, if you dial them all in so that there's no spread, it's actually a hugely accurate AEG. With the spread, it becomes a little bit more difficult to say where you're going to hit past 10 meters, because obviously things start to spread almost instantaneously at that point, especially if you're running something light like a 0.2 or a 0.25. We obviously run into the realms of the wind and stuff like that, altering trajectory and what have you. What's the downside of this rifle? I've heard, touch wood, I've not had a lot of problems with this myself, or no problems with this, because I rate this very highly. But extreme use and longevity of these things can be a bit of an issue. We've seen gearboxes crack before, which of course then causes a host of issues. And that, for me, from what I'm led to believe, can be the most common issue, like a cracked gearbox and what have you. So perhaps not the longevity you would find in other Tokyo Maruis, but sort of understandable when you look at what's actually at play in here and the resistance factors and what have you. But that appears to be a longevity issue, something that's going to happen over a number of years, rather than happen on your second game day or anything like that. Gearbox casings and everything are available, and you know, I don't know how much your average tech is going to charge you to put a new one in, but you can actually buy upgraded ones as well, I believe, to stop the problem ever reoccurring. So that might be something worth investing in if it ever did happen to you. Right, let's get down to the business end of this video and why I think this makes a fantastic squad support weapon for you. Traditionally, with this weapon, you will get a stick magazine like this. Now, all the magazines are actually interchangeable between the SGR12 and the AA12, so you've not got a problem with that at all. The SGR12's one, I would argue, looks a bit nicer than the ones you get with the AA12. The AA12s are very slab-sided. There's no design to them at all. The SGR12s come with these really nice sort of dummy shells internally. It just looks the business. It looks a lot nicer, and it just adds to the effect, really, especially if you're running some old Cyma or Tokyo Marui shells somewhere on your rig and you can see it all, and it all just kind of ties in really nicely. Now, those mags are all well and good, but they'll chew through them pretty sharpish. For an additional, well, depending on where you purchase it, usually around about £90, you can purchase one of these. Now, you can see this gets a lot of use. It is rattling around. There's plenty of BBs still in there. This is actually a 3,000 round drum mag. Now, 3,000 sounds like a lot, but obviously when you're running a tri-shot system, we are only talking about 1,000 real world pulls of the trigger. But suffice to say, let's put this in and show you what this looks like. Suffice to say, it gives you a hell of a lot of plastic to put down range. So it is a bit fiddly. Once it goes in, we get a really nice look to this thing. The drum on the bottom, and it's actually the drum that I think helps justify having a foregrip at the front as well, just to give you that little bit more stability as you reach around the drum, rather than trying to hug it and you know, get your hand caught in underneath and that kind of thing. Horses for courses, you might not feel the same way. It's entirely up to you. But like I say, 1,000 real world pulls of the trigger from this drum mag. It is battery operated. Wind it up just on the base of the drum. Really easy to get to, really easy to actuate. And it transforms this weapon. It absolutely does. It transforms it from a really cool full auto shotgun that you can have a hell of a lot of fun with, to something that you can absolutely dominate the opposition team with. Like I say, if you've got it dialed in so that the spread isn't that great, or even if you do want the spread really great, and just to keep heads down in trenches or wherever they're held up, this thing will allow your squad to move freely while you're laying down plastic better than anything else I've ever come across, because people see this thing and they duck. And that's why I think, comparatively, this makes a great squad support weapon. A, because it can lay that much plastic down, but B, these box mags and the way it feeds in like a standard AEG, for me, make it second to none as a squad support weapon. You get something like an M249 or something like that, and unless you're running M4 style Stanang mags in the side of it and everything, you usually get, with something like a 249 or you know, something of the same ilk, usually get feed issues because they're using those tubes that come up. They can get snagged, they can have a kink in them. Sometimes the motors in those gear in the box mags and everything don't quite sync up properly. Some of them are supposed to be sound activated and they never fucking work and all the rest of it. You can have a host of problems with a proper squad support weapon that you just don't get with this. It feeds every time. It's easy to actuate the magazine. You could run 2 of these in a dump pouch if you wanted to. If you really wanted to invest, you could run 2 of these in a dump pouch, and you'd have all the BBs you'd need for an entire game day on your person, in these rather, you know, and this is going to drop BBs on the floor now, in these rather noisy box mags. But then if you're running squad support, necessarily causing a lot of noise isn't your issue anyway. But suffice to say, really, really great, transformative for this particular rifle. The other thing worth mentioning is, obviously we talked about if you ran 2 or 3 of these in dump pouches and stuff, but they're actually hugely easy to fill as well. We get a fill window up at the top here. So if at any point in the game day you feel like you're running low, you literally flick that open, fill it up on the fly with a bottle that's in a dump pouch or somewhere. You don't have to invest in 2 or 3 of these. That's you know, stupidity really. In today's current, you know, financial climate, that would be a stupid investment. But suffice to say, everything you need on the go. It's arguably more maneuverable than your standard M249 or SAW or anything like that. It's a little bit shorter, a little bit more traditional in terms of feeling like an M4 in your hand or that kind of thing, albeit a fucking heavy M4. But yeah, like I say, I think it's hugely versatile. I think it makes a fantastic squad support weapon, and I think you should pick one up today. Okay guys, that's been my look at the Tokyo Marui SGR12. Incidentally, I will just add on to the end of this video, if you want to take the risk, I don't know what they're like, but Cyma have just bought the rights to copy this thing. You can now pick up a discount version of the Tokyo Marui SGR12. Cyma make the SGR12 as well now, and it retails for about £200 cheaper than the Tokyo Marui version. How good it is, I have no idea, but it may be something you want to consider. And on that note, if this has been of any help to you in a future purchase or just any entertainment to you, then as always, a like and a subscribe is always welcome, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.